kind of like this. It's modern. No, it's called Runaway Diva. I've dated a few runaway divas, but I have, but, it's the dating process. I don't really have anything bad to say about the runaway divas. If you really want to know, very beautiful women. They want their own charms in themselves. I certainly don't want to be anything but chivalrous. Anyway, I am Marky Romeo Bilson, 1420 WEMB Sports Radio, and the name of the program is Tri-Cities Sports Now. Big news in the Tri-Cities. Charlie Cole, I think, is the first back, at least in 20 years, but he's the first ball player to sign with a D1 college, a football player, to sign with a D1 college when he announced, I guess he didn't sign officially, but he announced letter of intent to go to Tulane, which was up on the Rivals account? No! Army! Army's getting a lot of players recently from the Tri-Cities. I mean, that's the pipeline. You'd think Tennessee. You'd think Virginia Tech. I don't know, maybe Army is coming into the backyard and taking all the Tri-Cities players away, and that's why Army's nationally ranked these days, and not the Vols or the Hokies. Kind of surprising that's the case. Again, and Alejandro Villanueva, I mean, starting an offensive line after playing at West Point and serving his commitment and such. Anyway, Charlie Cole, the running back, Daniel Boone, he'll play one more year for the Trailblazers, and he'll go to West Point. He'll join Cade Ballard. Well, might be a Cade Ballard handing off to Charlie Cole situation in a future Army-Navy game. If that happens, I'm going to Philly. I'm Marky Bilson, Tri-Cities Sports Now. Also in the sports news to talk about, tomorrow we're going to talk to Teresa Gennaro about who's going to win the Kentucky Derby. It won't be Omaha Beach, who was the 4-1 favorite, and on Tuesday I told you that he was going to be coming out of the 12th post and all that. Omaha Beach was scratched because of a breathing problem Wednesday night. That means that trainer Richard Mandela and jockey Mike Smith, who are a couple of Hall of Famers, won't be riding in the Kentucky Derby. It also means that the Kentucky Derby continues to be hell for the favorites. Absolute hell for the favorite. I mean, it was 20 years they didn't have a favorite win the Kentucky Derby. Talked all about situations of, need a Triple Crown winner and all that. I've always debated that. Because I don't know if having, a 1-4 favorite running in the Belmont is all that good for horse racing. Really. I mean, that's the flip side of the coin. Anyhow, this means that game winner, who went off at 5-1, is now 9-2. At least he was in the, I guess, let's see here, late last night. Those are the odds it is now, and he's going out of the 16th post. Anyway, Teresa Gennaro, Brooklyn backstretch, will tell us who she likes, Kentucky Oaks with all the fillies, all of that. By the way, that'll be at 12:30 tomorrow. Speaking of the fillies, Daniel Norris, of course, getting a no decision and a 7-3 loss that the Detroit Tigers have experienced the Phils yesterday. Atlanta trying to keep pace with the Fightin' Phils in the National League East Division. Phils with a record of 17-13. And I mentioned before that surprisingly maybe to some people, the Minnesota Twins are 18-10, leading the American League, best record in the American League, by, what is it now? It's actually by percentage points, I believe, and a game in the loss column ahead of Tampa Bay, who's been a real big surprise. But the Phillies lead the National League East by 2 games over Atlanta. Atlanta is trying not to fall 2.5 back, because right now they trail to the San Diego Padres 1-0 in the early part of that ball game. Also, it's still scoreless between the Mets and the Reds and the Amazons, if you are so concerned. By the way, bottom of the third inning, the Braves are hitting in that frame down 1-0 to the Friars. Redlegs and Amazons. Redlegs, of course, having a very tough season at 13-17 and in last place in the National League Central, which has 14. They're the only team in the NL Central that doesn't have a 500 or better record. They're the only team with a losing record in the entire division. Meanwhile, the Mets are at 500, just like the Braves. They're tied for second, 2 games back of the Red Quakers. How many secondary nicknames can I use? Let's see. We can go Bravos for Braves. Let's see here. Nationals, we got Nats. Marlins, we got Fish. Yeah, they have a rematch of the 97 series going on. Fish beat the Indians last night, and it was a real costly loss for the Tribe, who fall to 2.5 games out after losing to the 9-21 Marlins at a park that has a nightclub called the Clevelander. That might be actually one of the things where, baseball, you're talking about Marlins attendance is down. Could the Marlins, because they've got, dancing girls at a nightclub in their ballpark, the Clevelander, could they be actually trying to draw like a minor league team? Oh, it's about the event. Oh, it's about the promotion. Thank you, Mike Beck. Thank you, beer sales at Cardinal Park, all that. And as a result, in the major leagues, maybe it's more about what's on the field. Think about that. Players are more identifiable. The game is played at a higher level. Anyway, they talk about why baseball attendance is down and such. Corey Kluber, though, a big hit for the Cleveland Indians. He was hit by a line drive, and although his initial diagnosis is really tough, Brian Anderson of the Marlins hit a line drive off his pitching arm. There's said to be a non-displaced fracture of the right ulna. Forearm is really swelled up, and what can you say? You take a line drive off your pitching arm. Corey Kluber, one of the stars and the big-name pitchers for the Tribe, as well as in baseball, that's not going to do well for competitive balance in the American League Central. That might actually, at a very early date, have won the division for the Twins. You really want to get right down to it. I know Sports Illustrated did the Twins winning the division. Yeah, I might do it. Because a lot of people think the Indians are going to be motivated to sell. Trevor Bauer has all but said he thinks he's going to get dealt sooner than later. He's eligible for free agency after 2020. Well, that would mean that he'd have at least 2 years with the Indians if they were contenders. But yeah, what could they get? It's another reason, I think, why you've got so many, why you've got a problem with baseball attendance. You've got a pretty big winning team, the Indians, and, well, wait a minute, they've got one of the best pitchers in baseball, Trevor Bauer. Well, they can't be expected to keep him. Why? There is some talk now that the Twins, of all people, might be more interested in Craig Kimbrell and Dallas Keuchel, who still remain unsigned, because they have now the opportunity to win the division. We shall wait and see. Anyway, but I wanted to mention those sports stories. One of the things in Sports Illustrated, speaking of Sports Illustrated, they came out with a story, got my magazine today, the rise and spectacular crash of the Alliance of American Football. I'm trying to get a handle on all this. I had some people talk to me online. People are angry at the NFL. Ratings are back. They've taken care of the Colin Kaepernick problem. Please explain to me why. Well, they're angry. Well, here are the ratings, and all this, and I don't believe them. It's just like presidential polls. I just renewed my season tickets yesterday for the Steelers, by the way. I mean, so boycott the NFL. They're still drawing, selling out every game and such. Which is one thing you can say about the AAF now, when their top team only drew 27,000 fans a game. Anyway, it's a very interesting story, and they talk about it. And I mentioned before how when you have one owner trying to run the league, there isn't really a care, and there really isn't competition, and there are problems. The problem was that with the Alliance of American Football, their initial investors, well, some of them were actually crooks. Here's the deal. It was laid out by Bill Polian and Charlie Ebersol, son of Dick Ebersol, who couldn't get the XFL off the ground, but nevertheless. They built a core goal, and they wanted an off-season football league. They felt that there were millions of fans that craved football after the NFL season ended. Maybe there are. But there's also arena football, and how's that coming along? I remember watching Canadian Football League games on ESPN in the early days of that. You would have thought that the CFL would have, been something big then. All the passing in the world in that league, you only got 3 downs. No. I don't know. And the thing is, I actually think that the teams up there, the Montreal Alouettes, the Toronto Argonauts, it seems like you ever pick up a paper, a sports section in Canada, and it's always, the CFL could go out of business. It seems like that's always being talked about, but nevertheless, I mean, those are recognizable names. Well, they're not American. Who are you going to root for? And all? I mean, Johnny Majors went to play for the Montreal Alouettes back in the day. Think about that. So, you don't think that people around here wouldn't have, rooted for the Alouettes if they had the chance? You don't think that newspapers back in the day got a shoulder injury and that's what brought them into coaching at a very young age? But you don't think that the box scores wouldn't have been run in the papers around here? They should have been if they knew what they were doing. Then again, they might not have. I don't know. Regardless, the idea of the league, and I'll get to this in the next segment as well here, Tom Dundon, of course, came in when some high-profile investors got in trouble with the law. Dundon started picking apart the league, started pinching pennies. When it all ended, there was about $500,000 cash in hand. League owed about $40 million when they called bankruptcy. The assets were $11 million. The idea is that maybe Dundon just wanted the app. You've heard about this? This was supposed to be the way that people would watch the Alliance of American Football. It was going to be the next big thing. It's got a chance to be the next big thing. I'm going to tell you about this here and what that app really is going to do. But I'll also tell you that, yes, when you have one man or even two running all the franchises, you get a bad owner in baseball, a Marge Schott, in basketball, Daniel Sterling. You can get rid of him. You have a bad owner when you have one man running the entire league, the league goes belly up. That's what happened with the AAF. That's what I told you was going to happen with the AAF. I'm Mark E. Bilson. I'll continue this after this. Second hour coming up, Tri-City Sports Now.